So let's take a couple minutes and go over two more examples that are similar to what we did before, but this time let's not use distribution to figure out what this product is going to be. Okay, so let's see if we can just remember our pattern. So we remember our pattern is to take the square of the first term and take the square of the last term, and then we'll work on the middle term in just a minute. Okay, so remember, so this is x plus 3 squared. So we know that our first term is going to be x squared, and we know that our last term is going to be 3 times 3, which is 9. Now, to get the middle term, all we do is either add this constant to itself or multiply it by 2. So 3 times 2 equals 6, or 3 plus 3 equals 6. So whatever works better as you work through it in your own process. So we're going to have a plus 6x in the middle. So very simple. We just took the square, the perfect square of this, took the perfect square of the last term, and to get the middle term, we just did 3 plus 3 instead of 3 times 3, and we know that we're going to have an x there. Now, if you can't see that, if this pattern is not making sense to you, that's okay. You can always rely on distribution. So just make sure that you remember that. If this pattern isn't clear to you yet, it might in another class, because you'll see this again in intermediate algebra. If it doesn't make sense, just use your distribution, because you're going to come up with the same answer. Now, what about if we have something like this? So this is a little bit more complicated. So we have the coefficient on the front, but it's not just 4y. This y has a cubed with it. So we've got an exponent on an exponent. So we got to think back to our power rule, where we have, it's going to be a 3 here and then a 2 outside. So we have to remember our power rule there. Okay, so let me go ahead and change colors here. So we're going to take the perfect square of this. So 4 times 4 is 16, and then y cubed times y cubed. So that's going to be y to the 6th. So that's our first term. Now our last term is a negative 2 times a negative 2, which is going to be a positive 4, correct? Now this is where it might be a little tricky, because you have a number on the front and you have a number on the back. So what you have to do in order to get this term in the middle is do 4 times 2. So do first times the last, and that's going to equal 8. And then add that to itself. So do 8 plus 8, which will be 16 in that case. So 4 times 2, which is 8, and then add it to itself, which is also going to be 16. Now, what are we going to put there? Our variable is a y. And what sign are we going to have? Well, because this is a negative sign here, this is going to be a negative sign here. All right? So the last term should always be positive. Always. For these perfect square trinomials, the last term should always be positive. The middle term, that sign is what's going to match the sign that's inside the parentheses. So if this is a plus, then your first sign will be a plus. If this is a negative, then your first sign will be a negative. The second sign is what should always be a positive for these perfect square trinomials.